Meanwhile, an Ottawa judge has granted a 10-day injunction to silence the incessant honking from parked trucks on the streets. The decision comes after a multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit was filed by a group of Ottawa residents. They argue the prolonged noise is causing permanent harm. So what does this decision truly mean, and how will this injunction be enforced? Joining us now is litigation lawyer Fred Schumann. Fred, we appreciate you joining us. A bit of a complex issue in many respects, but let's begin with the basics. The injunction came out of a class action lawsuit. What exactly does this mean?
So an injunction is just a court order that tells somebody they have to do something or that they can't do something. It can be enforced by the police arresting somebody for contempt of court. And it lasts, in this case, for 10 days. So that's what the court has ordered. The court has essentially ordered in this case that you can't use a horn in downtown Ottawa unless you're a fire truck, basically.
All right. So there are a lot of trucks, potentially a lot of protesters as well. So let's talk about it. Is this even enforceable given the situation?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's enforceable. There may be difficulties with enforcing it. I mean, remember, it's an anti-honk injunction. It's not an anti-protest injunction. And I think as most classroom teachers know, if somebody makes a noise and you're not watching them at that very moment, it can be difficult to tell who made the noise. So there may be practical difficulties with actually identifying somebody and convicting them of contempt of court. But the order authorizes the police to arrest people if they have reasonable grounds to believe that they've contravened the order by honking. So that may be something easier for the police to to manage and form those grounds. But the latest reports I've seen have suggested that the injunction has worked. Not because it's being enforced, but because people simply seem to be complying with it and not honking. So, I mean, actual enforcement isn't always necessary. Sometimes people just do what the court's ordered them to do voluntarily.
What's interesting, to break this down, is this is a civil suit. This isn't a criminal court that is deciding this. So you kind of wonder where this could go. I mean, the honking is one thing. But even beyond this, this is a class action lawsuit. $9.8 million is what they were seeking in terms of damages. So there are a few layers to this. But how long could this process take, you know, from the plaintiff's point of view?
Well, that depends. I think if the plaintiffs are really interested in pushing this all the way to a trial or something like that. I mean, class action lawsuits can take years to actually come to that final stage. But I'm not sure that the plaintiffs are really in this for the long haul in that sense. I mean, if I were representing the plaintiffs, I think I would have been interested in starting a class action lawsuit, not because I necessarily want to go to trial, not because it's necessary to get the injunction. You don't have to have a class action lawsuit to get an injunction like this, but to make the threat that was made a few days ago of large money damages against the protesters. So a few days ago, there was this threat by the plaintiffs' lawyers. And I don't mean threat to criticize them, but they were simply saying, if you stay here and you continue these activities, you are going to be a defendant in this lawsuit and you're going to potentially be on the hook for a very large amount of money damages because the damages are being suffered by everybody in the area. And they were offering to release the protesters legally from that lawsuit if they left. And so the class action tool was useful in making that threat credibly and offering people a release if they left.
But it is, at the end of the day, just a reprieve. So this injunction, in effect, for 10 days, do we have a sense what happens after that?
Yeah, so in 10 days, or in 9 days, the plaintiff's lawyers will go back to court, back to the judge who ordered this injunction. And remember, there was one lawyer there named Keith Wilson, who represented some of the protesters, perhaps the organizers, I think. So he was there. He opposed the injunction yesterday. And they'll be back before the judge in 9 days to seek, and the plaintiffs will be seeking an extension, seeking to continue that injunction. And they need to do that because the judge wasn't satisfied that all of the protesters had notice of the motion for an injunction. So they didn't all know that this was coming to court. They didn't all have the opportunity to be there yesterday and tell their side of the story. So the judge is only allowed to make an order that lasts for 10 days. So, but he's already booked the return date, which is coming back to court. The plaintiffs will say, we want another 10 days, or, we've done all these things in the interim. We've broadcast the order on the TV and amplified it, and you should grant an injunction now for a longer period of time.
Well, this could take a while in a number of court cases. We appreciate this. Fred Schumann, a litigation lawyer, we appreciate your time, sir.
Thanks very much for having me.